I'm officially labeling September as one of my worst reading months in a very long time. Let me tell you why. Hello my loves and welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing our September reading wrap up, which is crazy to me that we are already in October, but that is just like a whole nother issue in itself. I had a really weird reading month. If I'm being honest, it's probably one of the worst reading months that I've had in a very long time. And I know that I'm a firm believer of quality over quantity. I read 10 books this month and I would have been happy with 10 if those 10 books were all amazing. So let me tell you a little bit about it. I read 10 books this month and I think half of them were below 4 stars. I enjoyed some books at the start of this month and at the end of this month, but honestly, I don't know if I was in a slump because of life or if I just wasn't reading those amazing books that make me want to continue reading. So let's get into the 10 books that I read this month. There are a few that are all sort of interconnected and continue on from each other. So this one video is not going to be too long, which is exciting because I feel like all of my wrap-ups videos are like 30-40 minutes. So hopefully this one's not going to be too long for you guys and we can just get straight into it. I read a couple of books that have been on my TBR for a very, very long time. I've read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I read 7 of my physical books and obviously 3 of the books were not physical and I read them on Kindle, which is fine because the ones that I did read on Kindle were really, really enjoyable. So let's get into it and let's just get this started. So September started off with a bang. I feel like the first book that I read in September was so good and it was setting me up for the perfect month, and that was After the Storm by Laura Pavlov. Now this is the last book in the Cottonwood Cove series. I loved this book so much. I gave it 5 stars and I give most of Laura Pavlov's books 5 stars because I love them so much, and this book is just, it was the perfect way to end the series, and I was so sad that the series was done, and I don't know what I'm going to do now. I'm just going to have to keep reading some of her other books and her new series. But this one is a small town, single dad, 1 bed, second chance romance, and It's Always Been You. So we've got Cage. Cage is the grumpy single dad who loves his daughter more than life itself. Presley is the one that got away. Life has always gotten in the way of their love for each other, but now Presley is back in Cottonwood Cove, freshly single, and Cage cannot deny the connection that they still share. Presley is fresh out of a divorce and is trying to find her feet again, and Cage's sole focus is his daughter. So now that they've ended up in a car together in the middle of a snowstorm, which leads to a hotel room with only 1 bed, will they be able to deny the attraction anymore? This book. I want to start off by saying that I love this book so much because it was so realistic. And I feel like some romance books can be really unrealistic. They're really fun. It's like a little fantasy. You feel like you're in another world. The characters don't really feel overly real in some romance books. And some of the things that I think happen can be a bit different, but this book was honestly so hyper realistic. I felt like these characters were real life characters. I felt like their love was just so, like, you could feel their love when you flip the pages and you just really understood them on such a personal, deep level. I feel like they both grew so much throughout the book, and the conflict and resolution was also really realistic as well. You know, sometimes when you read a book and the conflict is just like super random and then it's just like fixed like that and it just doesn't feel very realistic. I feel like this was the complete opposite of that. Like the storyline was perfect, the way that they sort of rekindled was perfect, and I really think that Laura smashed out of the park with this one. I absolutely loved it, and I didn't expect to love Cage as much as I did. In all of the other books, he wasn't really like a standout character for me. I loved that he was a grumpy single dad, but him coming out in this book was just amazing and I loved it, and I love this entire series. This series, the Cottonwood Cove series, is one of my favorite small town series, and I will continue to recommend it to you guys for as long as I can because I just feel like it is one of those series that you have to read. You have to meet this family and meet these people, and I just love Laura's writing. It is so easy to binge. I think I read this book and I listened to it on audio, and it was just such an easy, quick read. And I just fell absolutely in love with the entire story. Like this story, the characters, the family. I'm so sad to say goodbye to them, but I love them so much. So this one was a 5-star read for me. I highly, highly recommend this entire series for you guys. It is so good, and yeah, just please read it. This was like one of my standout reads for this month, and I feel like it was one of my favorites, but I have a few others to talk about later on too. But I really absolutely love this book. The next book that I have that I read in September was Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. Now, if you guys know me, you know that I am an Elsie Silver stan through and through. I love her books, and I feel like this was one of my most anticipated reads for the second half of the year, after Wild Love, obviously. And I absolutely loved Wild Love. I feel like that book was so good, and I binged it. I couldn't stop reading it. I loved it. I loved the characters. And this book was so super hyped. Everyone that was reading it as ARC copies and reading it the day that it came out really loved it. And I heard a lot of whisperings about this book taking over from Heartless and Reckless. And if you guys have read Heartless and Reckless, you know that Daddy Cade and Theo are like top tier. They are top tier and no one can really beat them. But everyone was saying that West was like the top. They were dethroned for Western, and I was really intrigued to see what I thought when I started reading it. So I ended up rating this 4 stars. It wasn't Elsie's best work, and I know that that is going to upset so many of you guys, and I don't know if it was because of this wild slump that was coming on that's why I rated it 4 stars. I felt like with all of her other books, I couldn't put them down. I had such a pull to read them, but I just don't know if this one completely hit for me. So the tropes are small town, forced proximity, cowboy romance, single dad, country music singer, slow burn, and age gap. I think that it was potentially the slow burn aspect of this that put me off. I know that Elsie's books are super slow burn, and I love that, and I love that in all of her other books. But again, I don't know if it was my slump. I don't know if it was my slump that really just like made this not a 5-star read for me. It didn't stand out in the crowd of Elsie Silver books for me anyways, personally. So I'll tell you the synopsis on it, and then I'll sort of like dive in a little bit deeper into what I thought. So we've got Skylar Stone. She is a chart-topping country music star in need of an escape, and there is no better place to go than Rose Hill. She wants to take charge of her career and start making her own music at Rose Hill Records. She never planned to escape right into the arms of Weston Belmont. West is a horse-riding, shameless flirt who also happens to be a single dad. Skylar never planned on falling for the single dad next door. Her life as a celebrity has a chance to break them apart. She wants to stay, but her life is somewhere else. Okay. Now, the truck scene was very, very hot, and I loved it, and I feel like that was exactly what we were waiting for after what feels like the entire book. But like there were a couple things that really like maybe put me off. And I loved Weston, I really did, but I didn't feel a connection to Skylar. I think that was my issue. I didn't feel a connection to her, and I really loved him, but I just felt like there was a lot of unnecessary like stuff going on in the book that could have probably been like replaced for more important moments. I don't know. I find it really hard to pick apart things with this, because I know I gave it 4 stars. I wildly enjoyed it, but I just didn't love it. And I think that was the distinguish between 4 and 5 stars for me. And you guys know that I love Elsie Silver, and I am going to continue to read her books, and 4 stars is still amazing, and I still do recommend this. So many people absolutely love this book. I think it was me at the time, and I wasn't really in my reading zone, and I was pre-slumpy, and you know how it goes. Sometimes you just need like something that's gonna knock your boots off in order to like give me a 5-star at that point. And I felt like my boots were completely still on, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry to all my girlies that love Wild Eyes. It just wasn't my favorite. And I still think that Wild Love is the best one in this series. But I'd love to know your opinions. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. And if anyone sort of agrees with me on this one, or if you think that it was better than Heartless and Reckless. But for me, it just didn't top. It didn't hit. but that is just, you know, it's my opinion. Reading is subjective and we know this. But yeah, that is Wild Eyes. That was my second book that I read in September. It is about 100 degrees in Queensland right now, just so you guys know. I'm sweating. So the next 3 books that I've got are all very interconnected. They are all about the same characters, so there's not much to explain on every single one of them. So we've got the Addicted series here. We've got Ricochet, Addicted for Now, and Kiss the Sky. So if any of you have read Addicted to You, that is the first book in the series. And that one follows Lily and Lo. So they are both addicts. They're addicted to their own different things. I can't really say what they're addicted to on here. But it's really like a miscommunication trope and addiction trope. That's really all I can think. And best friends to lovers. You have Lily and Lo. They've been best friends for years. They fake date for their families in order to make them think that they are together, and it pretty much hides their addictions from their families, okay? If you want to find out what their addictions are, you're just going to have to read the books. I rated Addicted to You 3 stars, and I read it ages and ages and ages ago. I think it was last year, the start of last year, that I read it, and I've pretty much been holding off on these books for as long as I can remember because I didn't love the first one. I've heard a lot of people say that it gets good from like book 4 onwards. So I feel like that's a really hard slog to get into a series, and that's a lot of books that you have to read in order to get to the good parts. So the first one that I read was Addicted. This is book 2. It's like a novella, so I don't know if it's like book 1.5 or book 2, but I'm calling it book 2. And I rated this one 3 stars. I liked it more than the first one, but it still really wasn't very good. And I don't know if this is where my slump started. I don't know if reading these books put me in a slump or if it was life or whatever it was, but this one just like wasn't it for me. It is a direct continuation on from the first book, so I can't really tell you too much about it without spoiling the first book. And that's going to be sort of the entire experience for the rest of this series. I feel like you need to read it in order to understand what I'm talking about. I am still yet to feel like the first 3 books are worth it for this series, but I am going to continue the series because I've started it and I'm really interested to see. I've made it this far. I really want to see what people are talking about when it comes to the rest of the books in the series. So this one, yeah, was a 3 star for me. It wasn't amazing. I didn't love it, but it was still enjoyable, and it's a quick read. Like, it is really quick. It's really short. It's one of those books that I was like, well, it's really short. I may as well just read it and see how I go. But it leaves you on a cliffy. That's my thing. It leaves you on a real big cliffhanger. So that is why I immediately picked up Addicted for Now. Now, I really didn't like this series. I'm not enjoying the series so far, but the cliffy is what made me start this ginormous book. Now, I think this is where I sort of battle with myself internally about whether I'm going to DNF a book or not. I struggled really hard to get into this book. I feel like it took so long to have a resolution and to resolve the cliffhanger that you are left on with the second book, and I rated this one 3.5 stars. I feel like the ending was really, really solid and it was really good, and that's why it was bumped up to 3.5. And I felt like you had more storyline, more plot in this book compared to the other 2. I feel like the other 2 were just their addictions and them fighting and, you know, like miscommunication. And I feel like the only books that I've really enjoyed with the miscommunication trope are Magnolia Park series. So this one was really, I don't know, like this series has been really difficult for me, and it's one of those ones where every time I'm like in the middle of the book, I go, do I DNF it? Do I just keep going? And then I push myself because I know that people love this series and I just want to understand it. Like, I want to understand why people read it and love it, and it just isn't for me so far, according to this book. Like, as soon as I finished this book, I was like, do I really want to start the next book? But I did it anyways. I did it anyways, and I read Kiss the Sky. So this one is where we start with the Calloway sisters. So it is the Addicted Calloway series. The first 3 books follow Lily and Lo, and then we move on to Lily's sisters. So this one is kind of different. It was a really different book. It's something that I haven't really read much of before. So it follows Lily's sister Rose and her boyfriend Connor. So Rose is known as the Ice Queen. She's the oldest Calloway sister, and Connor was once her biggest rival. She owns a fashion empire that is crumbling to the ground after a family scandal, so she decides to start a reality show that showcases her crazy family. Drama seems to follow this family, and Rose finds herself falling more and more for Connor while her world is crumbling around her. I enjoyed this more, I think, than the other ones, but I still rated it 3 stars. I know that this is where things are supposed to get good, and everyone loves Connor so much, and I just couldn't understand it. The miscommunication was really, really frustrating me, and it's not between Rose and Connor, it's between the entire family and the entire like production crew, and I found myself more angry in this book than I was happy. And it was really short, and I felt like it took me forever to read, and it's really unlike me to say these things about books. And I just like, I found it really, really difficult to continue, and I have sort of put the series back on hold, and I know that I did really well considering that the books are not my favorite. I do think that if you're thinking about giving this series a try, you should, and you should take it at face value. Like, I don't know if I would overly recommend it to people, but then again, I want people to read it for themselves. Like, maybe this series is just not for me. Maybe the addictions are just not for me, and the characters, I can't relate to them. I think that's my biggest problem. But I'm really, really interested to go on to Lily's other sister, Daisy. I'm really intrigued in her story, and I will continue on just to read her books, and then I will see how I feel. Apparently Daisy's book is really good, so I'm very excited to see what I think about that. But the first 4 books in the series were just sort of not for me. And that's okay, because I feel like reading, again, is so subjective. Like, I may really not like a book that everyone else loves, and that's just everyone's own personal opinion. It's your own experiences, it's your own ability to connect with characters, and for me, I just couldn't connect with them, and that's okay. But it is a really popular series. It's a very popular series, so I'm really interested to see what you guys think. If any of you have read them, please tell me. If they get better, tell me please, because I know that a lot of people said that after the second book it gets better, but I'm still yet to really feel that pull and that connection with this family. So those are the 3 books that I read, and I think that they sort of started my slump. I think that the ratings and how much I enjoyed them really just like irked me, and I think that that's how we started this slump. Okay, if I'm looking back at it now, I think these books did that. So I am really interested to talk to you guys about the next couple of books that I read, because I feel like they cemented my slump even further, but in the other way. Like, these books made me slump because I didn't enjoy them, but now I feel like after this I read so many books I did enjoy that they ruined every other book for me. The next book that I read was Sunshine by Michaela Jean Taylor. This is such a good book. This is such a good book. That's what I'm saying when I start this off, just before I tell you anything about the book itself. So it is marketed as a Friday Night Lights meets Yellowstone, okay? And I have to be really picky and choosy on what I tell you about this book, because there is so much that happens that's not on the back of the book that would like ruin the plot. And so I'm gonna try and keep it really, really short and sweet with my synopsis of this and like my tropes and everything, because I don't want to spoil it, because it just comes out as like such left field, and you need the emotions there, okay? Like, you need to not know so that you can just understand what happens, because I went into it blind, and I feel like that is the perfect way to go into it. So it is a small town cowboy romance. It's always been you, and that's all I'm telling you, okay? That's all I'm telling you, because I feel like anything else would just like spoil the entire thing. So it follows Layla. Layla has always wanted more than staying in the small town of Saddlebrook Falls. She has always dreamt of getting out and making a life for herself, and never to follow the traditional future her mother has planned. That is until in high school she finds herself falling for Jason Moore, the starting football quarterback. She finds her dreams of living life for herself disappearing. Still, despite planning her forever with Jason, she's intent on chasing her own dreams and heads to NYU for college. When a devastating loss forces her to return to her hometown, Layla finds herself reconsidering everything she thought she knew about herself. Okay, that is all I'm telling you about it because I feel like you just need to go into it really blind. I love this book so much. I rated it 5 stars. My camera tried to die, but we are back. So I really love this book. I feel like it is something that I have never really read anything of before, and I feel like it was done so well and executed perfectly. I loved the characters. I loved the story. I was like sobbing, and then I was so happy. I was giddy. I felt all the emotions. Seriously, I couldn't recommend this book enough. I think to me it's like a hidden gem. I found it on Instagram and I found the author and I was like, this cover is so cute, I'm gonna read it, and I'm so glad I did. It is now one of my like top favorite small town cowboy romances because it is so different. Because I feel like some of your small town cowboy romances can be very similar, and I feel like with it then you come with like the same tropes, the same ideas, and they sort of all just get lost in each other and it's hard to find one that stands out. But this one really stands out for me, and I honestly just loved it so much, and I think you guys really need to read it because I need you to understand the plot twist so I can talk to some of you guys about it, because I don't think anyone else has read this book and I need you guys to read it, okay? The next book that I read was Island Arrangement by Eloise Tynan. This was an arc that I read that I got approved for, and I was so excited about it. I love Eloise Tynan's books so much, and I feel like she is such a good author. She's an Australian author as well. If you want to check out some of her other books, she writes some amazing sports romances that I love. Some of my favorite sports romances that I've ever read. And this book is a very different one for her. I find it is a grumpy sunshine, fake dating, forced proximity, vacation holiday, billionaire romance. So it gives Anyone But You know the movie, the one with Sydney Sweeney in it, it gives those vibes, and that's what it's marketed as. So it follows Blake, who needs a date for his brother's destination wedding and decides to rent a date. Honor owns a companion for hire business and cannot stand her new grumpy fake boyfriend. His main goal is avoiding his ex-fiance and his family's questions about his future, and her goal is to make it through this vacation. It's supposed to be easy. Just fake date each other, then part ways at the end of the vacation. They both didn't expect the attraction they had for each other. They grow closer as they spend more and more time together, and will they ruin everything by acting on these feelings? So I read this book, I'm not kidding, in one sitting. I did not sleep. I couldn't put it down. I was loving it. It is one of those perfect, cute, fluffy romances. If you're looking for one that's really fast paced, really easy to read, then this book is for you. I rated it 4 stars. It wasn't a 5-star read for me because I didn't get those 5-star feelings, but I still loved it. I couldn't put it down. I was loving it. I was giggling. I was kicking my feet. I was angry at the same time. I feel like Blake kind of annoyed me a little bit, and that's why I didn't rate it 5 stars. Like, he was good towards the end, but like I really just didn't like his vibe. I didn't like his vibe with the ex-girlfriend. If you read it, you'll sort of understand. But I did enjoy it nonetheless, and I feel like it was just like such a cute, fluffy romance, and it's one of those books that would be a perfect palate cleanser after like a very heavy fantasy or a thriller, or if you're just not really sure what to read. I really enjoyed it, and I think you guys will too. It's just like the perfect fun little romance. The next book that I read in September was Cash by Jessica Peterson. Now, I saw this all over my TikTok FYP. Like, I feel like everyone was reading this book and everyone was raving about it. So I thought, I mean, why not? I'm just gonna do it too. I was like, I need another book that's gonna give like sunshine vibes because I loved it so much. And this book did not disappoint. I absolutely loved it. I feel like it was such a good cowboy romance. So it is small town, city girl cowboy, enemies to lovers, grumpy sunshine, and no third act breakup. I rated this one 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. It was so good. It was like your perfect cowboy romance. It was so cute. It was so sweet. There was so much going on. This book follows Mollie. I know, it's felt exactly the same way. It was kind of hard for me to get over that to begin with at the start. I feel like it was really weird for me. So Mollie and her dad have been estranged for years, but as his only living relative, it's no surprise she inherits his massive cattle ranch when he dies. However, what she wasn't expecting was that the will would require her to live on the ranch and manage it for a year before receiving her inheritance money. Now a city girl, she never imagined having to move back to cowboy country, but she needs the money to invest in her company. There is one giant roadblock for her plan: the ranch foreman, a grumpy cowboy, Cash Rivers. Working alongside each other leads to conversations beneath the stars and uncovering more and more about each other. This was only supposed to be a year, but what if it ends up being more? So honestly, I started this book and I was like, okay, another cowboy romance, like this is gonna be fun, city girl, cowboy. But I was blown away with how much I loved the characters and how connected I felt to the entire family and Mollie, the main character. I just loved her personality. And I loved that we knew these characters so well separately. And then when they came together and they started learning more and more about each other, you could really like understand why they are the way they are and why Cash is so grumpy. And I just loved it. I loved the whole like aspect at the start of her going to the will reading and being like really conflicted in what she was going to do, and then also then having to face the issues of her relationship with her father and having to sort of mend her relationship by herself because he's not there anymore, and coming to terms with how everything happened and why everything happened, and also feeling that like that strong jealousy feeling of him taking care of Cash and all of his brothers when he couldn't take care of her. So I really loved it, and I thought it was just such a good read, and I feel like the depth within it was perfect. Like it didn't feel too depth heavy to the point where it was all just focused around that and it was kind of like a little bit sad. I felt like it had the perfect mix of emotions. You had some very good spicy moments, and I feel like it was just all around really well balanced, and I think Jessica did such a good job, and I really just loved these characters so much. And I mean, she has the same name as me, so of course I had to be connected to her, but I did really enjoy it. I feel like the start was just like a tiny bit slow, but it was still really good, and I just chewed through that book. I loved it. I couldn't put it down, and it's just one of those really simple, easy reads that you just love from start to finish. So this is where I think everything sort of started to go a little bit downhill. A little bit downhill in the sense of I read two amazing 5-star reads that I loved. And then the books after took me so long to get through, okay? I did enjoy them still, but I felt like they just didn't hit the mark, and I will sort of explain a little bit more about it. So the next book that I have is Daydream by Hannah Grace. I went into this book with mixed emotions. That's how I'm going to explain it. I loved Icebreaker, and I feel like a lot of people loved Icebreaker. It was one of the first books that I read when I started reading, and I loved it. It was so good. It really sparked my love for reading again. So that is why I love Hannah Grace. But Wildfire, the second book, I did not like. I think I rated it 2 stars, and I think that was me being extremely generous with it. So I went into this book really just hoping to be redeemed in this series, but also keeping my expectations quite low because of how I felt about the other books. So this one is the 3rd book in the Maple Hill series. You guys would have heard of this book. You would have heard of Hannah Grace and Icebreaker in the entire series. I feel like there are a lot of mixed reviews going on out there. A lot of people love it. A lot of people didn't love it or expected to love it and didn't love it. I am sort of in the middle. I am seriously just in the middle. I rated this 3.5 stars. Seriously, just like so in the middle with it. I enjoyed it. I think it was a really cute read, but I think my problem is I have outgrown Hannah Grace. I think that is all I can sort of like put it back to, because I feel like if I read this in the start of my reading journey, I would have loved it, but I didn't love it as much as I would have. I feel like as I have continued to read and I've continued to read so many books, I've grown taste in certain areas and I have like a high expectation for books. I feel myself that I have a higher expectation than I did a couple of years ago. So that is why I think that this is only a 3.5-star read. I did enjoy it. I enjoyed the characters to a point, and then I felt like they kind of annoyed me, if that makes sense. I loved Henry in all of the other books, and I feel like he is a really solid character, but I feel like something just came out of him in this book that we didn't expect, or I didn't expect. So I'll give you a brief little like synopsis and tropes and everything on it, and then we can sort of like dive into it a little bit deeper. So it's a hockey romance, opposites attract. We've got a neurodivergent MMC, so Henry is neurodivergent, which I didn't really see coming. I don't know, maybe that was just me forgetting about him in the other books. Fake dating, tutoring, and friends to lovers. So Henry is the captain of the hockey team and Hallie is the introverted book lover. Hallie is recently single after her long-term boyfriend broke up with her, and for once she's decided to go and do what she wants to do. She wants to be a romance author and is planning on entering a contest, but she doesn't have experience being in that all-consuming love. So they come to an agreement. Hallie helps Henry pass and Henry pretends to be her boyfriend to show her the experiences she needs for her novel. So she's tutoring Henry and Henry's giving her, like taking her on dates, showing her what it's like to be in a relationship that's worthy of the romance books that she's reading. Okay, so that's sort of like the general consensus of it, and I did love the premise of it. I loved the idea of these two characters, but I feel like it was really dragged out. Like I feel like this was a serious slow burn, and I don't know if I just wasn't in the mood for a slow burn or what it was, but I feel like the neurodivergence of Henry was the pinnacle of the book. Like I feel like that was the main topic, and I really sometimes in books I don't love that. I love a neurodivergent character in a book, but I don't love it to be the only character personality that the person holds. You know what I mean? Like I feel like it was so overdone in this book and it kind of frustrated me. Like the rep was just too intense, and that's like the one thing I didn't love about Henry's character. And I feel like Hallie kind of annoyed me towards the end, and I feel like it was way too long. I feel like the book was way too long and it could have been shortened. But that is like my really like brief explanation without trying to spoil anything, because I do still like this book. I liked it. I thought it was cute and fluffy. I think it would be a great palette cleanser for anyone who needs something to just like, you know, just wet their palette a bit. But this is probably one of the books that I would recommend to new readers, to new romance readers, not to established readers who read a lot, because I just feel like it wouldn't hit the mark and you'd be disappointed by it. Because honestly, I have read so many hockey romances and so many amazing hockey romances, and this one just wasn't it. I know, I'm sorry, but it would be good for people who want to get into hockey romance and who want to like read a hockey romance that's not super heavy on the hockey. But yeah, 3.5 stars for that one. It was a bit disappointing, but I wasn't expecting too much from it anyways. So I did enjoy it more than Wildfire, but not as much as Icebreaker. But I would be really interested to see how I feel about Icebreaker if I was to reread it again now. The next book that I have is You're It by Lucy Harper. So this is the last book that I read in the month of September, and I saw this on TikTok ages ago and I ended up getting it for my birthday. It is a small town childhood best friend to lovers. It's always been you, and I noticed a bit of miscommunication trope in there as well. I saw it on TikTok. I saw this one scene on TikTok. I can't remember it now. I went into this book blind. If I knew the premise of it, I probably wouldn't have picked it up. I know that's really, it's hard. So this is about Jamie and Lucy. They have been best friends for as long as they can remember. They've been chasing each other since they were kids, playing an endless game of tag. But now that they've both moved back to their hometown, Lucy is excited to make her next move. Little does she know, when she surprises him with an epic tag, he is proposing to his girlfriend, and she ruins the entire thing. Turns out she saved him because his girlfriend was going to say no. They've both been in love with each other, but neither of them would confront how they felt. Now they're forced to confront their feelings for one another. The more time they spend with each other now, the more they realize they have never been just friends. Okay? So friends to lovers is not my favorite trope. You guys know this. And I think that this is Lucy Harper's debut novel. I feel like she has so much more room to grow, and I feel like this could have been really, really great. It just wasn't a book for me. And that's okay, because I feel like we all have our own like limits with tropes, and we all like what we like, and you know what, it is what it is. If I liked it, I liked it. If I didn't, I didn't. So I rated this one 3 stars. If you love friends to lovers, you guys will love this. This was like cute and spicy, but I just didn't feel the connection with both of them as a couple. Like I didn't feel like they worked together as a couple, and then the conflict was really, really stupid, and then the resolution was also kind of dumb too. So I feel like that's why I rated it 3 stars. I liked the characters separately, and I liked the idea of this like epic tag game, but I just feel like the characters by the end were kind of annoying me, and they were annoying me together, and I wasn't really rooting for them in the end. And you know when that happens, that it's not like an amazing book. I still flew through it. I read it in a couple of days. It's probably longer than it would take me to read a small town romance, but I was in a slump. I don't know if my slump is why I rated this 3 stars and didn't love it as much. Honestly, I don't know, but in the time I was like, this is a 3-star read for me. If you want to read like a cute small town romance, then this could be really good for you. And if you like friends to lovers, this is a great friends to lovers. It's just not for me. And in the time, I think I needed something super spicy or something super fast paced, and something that I could just like really dig my teeth into instead of being like annoyed with the characters. And at the time, this isn't what I needed. If I read it at a different time, maybe I would have loved it, but it just wasn't for me. And you know what? It was kind of disappointing because I was looking forward to this book so much. And now that I look back at it, I don't even remember what the scene was on TikTok that I saw that I really liked, that made me buy the book. I mean, you know, like I don't know, but I did enjoy it nonetheless. It was still a 3-star. Like I feel like there were a lot of really solid moments in there, not some amazing moments, but solid. You know what I mean? So guys, that is my September reading wrap up. This was a really, really super weird month for me. And if you guys know me, you know that this is so odd for me to rate so many books lower than 4 stars, and also to be kind of disappointed with some of them and to only read 10 books. But I feel like this month was so crazy heavy on life moments. I got sick. I was quite unwell for a long time, and I just feel like this really reflects my mood in September. But you know what? In October, we are going to be smashing out the book reads. We are going to be reading some good books. That's all I want. I've made a very good TBR. If you haven't seen that, you can see my last video. And we are just going to come back better than ever and read some really good books, okay? Thank you so much for sticking around and listening to this video. I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. And don't forget to like and subscribe and turn on post notifications, okay? Do it. And I want you guys to comment if there are any books here that I read that you've read. Tell me your thoughts. Tell me what your favorite book for the month was. Tell me anything, please. I just want to chat with you guys because I love you so much. Alrighty, bye guys. Have the best week.